Today we're going to talk about how inflammation and insulin resistance affect our body. Did you know that chronic insulin resistance can encourage inflammation and that chronic inflammation can also spike insulin? Let's dive into how this works. I'm C, a health coach and herbalist. Feel free to reach out on Facebook, YouTube, or email. It's all on the screen. Remember, insulin is a hormone, and practically all cells have an insulin receptor. Now, insulin receptors tell a cell something to do, like a task or a job, if I could say. And so it's different. That task or job is different depending on the type of cell. Now, let us remember, insulin goes beyond glucose management. It also helps regulate potassium levels, helps with muscle repair, stores fat as energy, and more. First, we'll look at what is inflammation. Inflammation is a response to an injury or infection or some toxin or foreign matter. So an example might be, someone experiences some kind of trauma to their knee. So what does the body do? There's an inflammatory response. White blood cells take action. The capillaries open and the circulation increases in that area of the body, and it's helping to fight and heal the issue. Inflammation is like a protective immune reaction, and multiple events of chemical changes in cells take place and within a certain area or certain areas of your body. However, chronic inflammation is different. This typically means it's 12 or more months. So it's a long-term inflammation. In other words, the issue was never resolved. So what are some ways, or how are some ways we get inflamed in the first place? There's autoimmune diseases, looking at nutrition, MSG, artificial sweeteners, chemical-laden foods, they essentially fake food, obesity. I did a video about synthetic insulin, and oftentimes when that's prescribed, you will also have weight gain. It's a vicious cycle. Hormonal changes, sugary snacks, foods, and all that. Some PUFAs, as they're called, polyunsaturated fatty acids like corn and sunflower oil. Leaky gut, and let me just mention there are tests that are out there to determine or help determine if you have leaky gut. Stress, nutrient deficiencies, allergies, infections, and of course more. These are just some. So essentially the body is not in homeostasis when it's inflamed. We already see that some of these can directly cause type 2 diabetes, like too much sugar, nutrient deficiencies, and gut issues as well. Now let's look at the relationship from chronic inflammation to insulin resistance. Again, we start with the inflammation occurring within our body, whether it's trauma, toxin, infection, something of that nature. The body responds, there's the immune system responds. However, over time, the issue is not fully resolved. And so the inflammation now becomes chronic. Cytokines disrupt insulin signaling within the cells, and the cytokines are protein chemical messengers, right? So the cortisol spikes due to prolonged stress, the inflammation, right? It causes the stress. Cortisol makes the cells less sensitive to insulin. Now the pancreas releases more insulin, and then the inflammation increases in the body, and insulin resistance persists. The cells are no longer insulin sensitive, hence insulin resistance. This is a vicious cycle. So the inflammation must be dealt with. Some type of protocol for whatever the issue is, not focusing on the symptoms, but the root of the matter for the inflammation. Now let's look at how we get from being insulin resistant to chronic inflammation. First, I want to say that insulin is necessary. It isn't the bad guy in any of this, because actually insulin is great. It stores extra energy. However, if we are in overflow mode and we have too much blood sugar in the bloodstream, the cells start resisting. I kind of see it as insulin trying to find a home for the glucose, but the cells are full. So cells are made to do a job or a task. And when we take it out of its scope and we continue to do that, this is where we get chronic conditions. So we need to get to the root of what we're doing to cause this within our body. Sorry to digress, but I just wanted to explain that. Glucose builds up in our blood, so our pancreas makes more insulin because it's trying to find a home for that glucose. The pancreas wants to move the glucose into the cells, but the cells resist because they already have enough. This leads to elevated glucose levels in the blood. This causes inflammation within our body and chronic inflammation if not resolved soon enough. Inflammation is necessary. However, chronic inflammation is an issue that must be dealt with before causing more havoc within our body. If we remain inflamed long term, inflammatory cells can make insulin spike even more. So in this instance, we need to deal with the root cause of why our cells are insulin resistant. One place to begin, of course, is our nutrition. What are we eating? We want to think of nutrition as supplying our body truly with what it needs to be in balance. So we want to look at healthy fats, protein, greens, things of that nature, not these refined carbs and chemical-laden food. What are some things we can do? One thing we can do is take the high sensitivity C-reactive protein test to measure inflammation. What I just spoke to is the nutrition, looking toward those healthy fats, greens, and proteins, limiting especially those refined processed foods. We want to start reading the labels when we see things like bleached wheat flour, when we see names that we can't pronounce or that is not an ingredient that you would buy from the store shelf. We most likely want to stay away from those type of foods. And if we are in a chronic state or a veteran diabetic, we really want to limit our carbs greatly because we're only elevating things more when we include more starch. Our body truly only needs a very, very small amount of sugar, and I'm very sure that most of us in the Western culture get way more than what we need. Another thing we want to look at is movement, walking, stair climbing, resistant weight bearing activities, and also enjoyable moving activities, whether it's frisbee, volleyball, basketball, or whatever it is for you. Another thing is sleep. Quality sleep is good for us to be able to manage stress and for our body to repair. And there are many techniques for managing stress. Just a simple thing of stop and taking deep breaths before responding to stressful situations may seem small and insignificant, but it's big when helping to cope with stress and manage it. Starting with those areas and improving and continuing to fine tune with support, whether it be from a coach, nutritionist, family, or such, is a very good place to start. Believe me, these actions do have an impact on your health. Don't delay taking steps toward this. Also, when it comes to inflammation, some herbs that you may want to consider are ginger and cayenne pepper, whatever you're able to tolerate. So let's take time and actually make time to listen to our body and support it with what it needs. If this is the kind of support that feels helpful, check the description for more help with my guides and newsletter. It's very real life and not overwhelming. And stay tuned for upcoming challenges or resets. Thank you and take care.